Hello and welcome to the Conversation Coffee Break with your host, Nadine Matheson. As always, I hope that you're well and I hope that you're enjoying your week. Today, I'm taking a coffee break with author Beth Lewis, whose new novel, The Rush, is out now. And can I just say, Beth Lewis's novel, The Rush, it's the most beautiful looking novel that I've seen all year. Actually, maybe ever. When you order this book, whether you go into the bookshop and pick it up off the shelf or when it lands on your doormat and you take it out the envelope, you will look at this cover and you'll run your hands along the cover and you will say to yourself, oh my God, this is beautiful. I never want it to come to harm. It really is a stunning, absolutely stunning book cover. So enjoy today's coffee break with Beth Lewis. And if you are enjoying it, please leave a comment. You can leave a comment on Spotify, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can also send me messages directly. You can email me at theconversation@nadinematheson.com, or you can send me DMs on my social media accounts. All the links to my social media accounts are in the show notes, and you'll also find the links to Beth's new novel, The Rush, in the show notes too. Now, normally I would say, sit back or go for a walk, but instead, grab a cup of coffee or tea and enjoy your break. Beth Lewis, welcome to the Conversation Coffee Break.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I don't know why we're so giggly like school kids, because we're excited about your book. We're excited about your book, The Rush. So I'm going to ask you to tell the listeners of the Conversation Coffee Break about your new book.
Oh, I love this bit, the elevator pitch of the book. But
I know. I try and dress it
better than I can.
I try and dress it up to not make put the pressure on you.
So the Rush is a historical crime novel, and it is about three women in the Yukon Gold Rush in 1898, and they are all based on real women at the time. A hotel owner, a miner's wife, and a journalist traveling to the goldfields from Kansas. When another woman is murdered in Dawson City, the three find their lives kind of colliding and intertwining as they try and figure out what happened to this woman, who is sadly also based on a real woman who was murdered at the time. Everything is kind of based on these real lives as much as possible. Even the dog is based on a real dog, and that was really fun. But the dog is fine. The dog is unscathed by the end. Let's just put that out there.
I understand why we have to clarify the dog's okay, but in back there's a little bit in my head that makes me go, why are we clarifying? But we have to. We have to.
I remember a long time ago asking on Twitter, when it was still a nice place to be, that what if I had a dog in it and the dog ended up dying, and people were like, I would throw the book across the room. I would 1-star review it everywhere. I would never read you again. I was like, the dog's fine. The dog's fine.
It's just, you could do whatever you want, you want to people in any way, shape or form. And readers are okay with it. Yeah. Any mention of a pet, like they're on guard. They're like, what happens? What happens?
Blacklisted author. Awful.
So you already explained that the characters in The Rush like influenced by real people. So it does follow on for the next question, which is like, what came to you first, the character, a specific scene, the overall premise, or something completely different?
For this book, it was the premise. Well, it was the setting, really. I wanted to write a novel set in the Gold Rush. I always have, and I did a talk at St Hilda's, as you know, because you were there.
Yeah.
This all came from that, because I gave a talk on Man vs. Wild and Jack London and the Gold Rush and things like that, and an editor came up to me afterwards and said, have you ever thought about writing a novel? And I was like, yes, only every month at least. And then it became very clear immediately that I needed to focus on the women. So that premise, the women of the Gold Rush, came first, and then it was quite easy to piece that into a full narrative when I discovered that these incredible women were alive at the time and doing what men were doing. They were mining, they were owning businesses, they were doing the whole 600-kilometer trek, but they were doing it in skirts and shoes, and unsuitable attire. And that is the kind of classic, women's history. We're kind of overlooked a bit. And I really wanted to pull that into the forward.
I was just trying to think when we did St Hilda's, which is it takes place at Oxford University, this crime fiction weekend, and the authors basically give talks. And I did mine on Mo Hader and said, you did, because I was at yours. So I think that was like 2022? 2022?
Yeah.
And to think there's an editor sitting in the audience and they ask you if you ever thought about writing a book, and even if your answer hadn't have been yes, would you have still said yes?
Probably, because you do when you're networking with an editor who's like interested in something. It's funny though that particular editor did make an offer on the Rush, but I didn't go with them. So it's weird how these things work out.
I think it is weird, but I also think it's fascinating. But also it just shows the listeners, that anything could happen. Any situation you find yourself in, or any opportunity that's presented to you, it's not wasted at all.
No,
something
not at all.
can follow on from that.
Yeah,
I feel like just stopping the interview there, but I can't.
Yeah. Just write the book. That's the only advice that there is, really.
Yeah. Okay, so Beth, which character surprised you the most whilst writing The Rush?
I think because they're based on real women, it was probably Kate. She's my journalist who does the trail to the goldfields, because with the gold rush, the interesting things were the mining, the town, and the journey to get there, which was horrendous. And about 70% of people turned back and didn't make it. But this particular journalist, who was called Emma Kelly, she made it, and she did it sort of by herself and paid her way. And she was really interesting because she was by herself with her dog Klondike, and she was a very modern woman at the time, and she was very much a feminist. And while she was on the trail, I found her written account of what happened there, so it was great to have that kind of primary source. And she, when you go up the trail to the gold fields, there's a section of rapids that are really, really dangerous, and you have to, women weren't allowed to go on those rapids. They'd stop, any women in the boat would get out, walk miles around the gorge, and then get back in on the other side, because women weren't allowed to do it for whatever reason. But Emma Kelly said, screw that, I'm going. Anything a man can do, I'm going to do, because I want to experience it all. So she was the first woman to run the rapids and survive and fine. And she enjoyed it so much that she got out, she walked back, and she did it again for fun.
Oh my God.
And I loved that. And it was just such a surprising thing, because it's such a dangerous thing to do for no real reason. And she did all these fun things. So she ended up owning gold claims and mining, and she never married, which gives you an insight into kind of who she was. But so she was the most surprising. And I tried to get as much of that as I could in Kate, who's my
I was just thinking, like, our only modern day equivalent of going across the rapids and enjoying it so much and getting off and doing it again, it's like, if you go to like a water theme park, you go down the crazy slide, you might need to go and do that again, and it's so not the same
thing. It's a roller coaster, isn't it?
But it's the roller coaster, that Rush.
Yeah, exactly. The Rush.
But to think they'd rather you walk around the whole gorge and do the long way round, as opposed to just, it'll be the shorter route but the more dangerous route.
Yeah.
And I suppose the way they will sell it is like, they're protecting you as women.
Oh yeah, it's for their own good. You
for your own
women,
good.
You can't handle it. Whereas, there were all these men who upended their boats and ended up losing their year's worth of food that they brought with them and everything that they had, and it was insanely dangerous.
Did you do research? And I don't mean the online research, but did you do the physical, get on the plane and go to the
I didn't. I have been to Canada a lot. I didn't do it specifically
Yeah.
for the book, but I have been whitewater rafting in Canada, and it's really fun and not at all dangerous.
Not at all
But so there
dangerous.
were some elements of sort of practical research in there, but I've been to a lot of Canada and the Pacific Northwest in that area
Yeah.
that it's in. But it is a dream to go to the Yukon and do the Gold Trail, or at least some of it.
What's the most random fact you now know because of this book?
This was an interesting question when you sent them to me.
I love this. I love the answer to these
Quite a
questions because it's
few.
all people are always surprised by their own answers. Like, I did not know.
One of the ones that I found really fascinating. So there's a fortune teller in the book, who she is a kind of almost sort of magical realism type character that helps the women out, and she always says that she tells the men what they want to hear and the women what they need to know to survive up there. But she's also based on a real woman called Madame Regnault, and my favorite fact is she was the first woman to ever be arrested for witchcraft in the Yukon. And that was because there was a big crackdown on fortune tellers, because that is a very lucrative business during a gold rush, that she absolutely refused to shut up shop. The Mounties were pressuring her and telling her to stop, but she was like, no, I'm not going to. And she went to court. She was arrested for witchcraft, but she was released without charge because it was found that her fortunes were mostly complete nonsense.
So if I was like a fortune teller, I don't know how I feel. I'll have mixed feelings about this. I'll be like, yay, I've been released.
Like,
dude, how dare you question my fortune?
Or she could just say, well, I knew this would happen. So.
Yeah, I would have just said that. I was like, well, I did my fortune before I got arrested. I knew it was going to happen. And I knew that you would believe that none of this was true.
But afterwards, she kept being a fortune teller and her business boomed because of the publicity from her arrest. It was great.
There's no such thing as bad publicity. I love that.
Not at all.
Beth, you know when you're writing these characters, because they are based on real people, do you feel like you have more responsibility to them?
This is the first time I've ever written a book based on real people. I felt like I had a responsibility to my main 4 women, so the 3 main characters and then the victim of the crime, and I felt like I needed to show them in not necessarily a wholly positive light, but a realistic one. And I tried to do that as much as possible with trying to find as many resources on the women as possible. But it was quite hard because there aren't that many, because they don't get the publicity and they weren't listened to. So I felt like I had to fictionalize a lot of their lives, and obviously the connection between them and the murder is fictional, but they all kind of have their roots in real people.
And I suppose that even if they had, I'm not saying even if they had, but even if they had been really successful, let's say out of the whole group of that who have gone off to gather gold, that they've been the most successful out of the group, the way women are viewed, they wouldn't have spoken about their story anyway. It just would have there wouldn't even have been a footnote, because women aren't meant to be anything. Yeah, they're always kind of incidental, and they are a footnote in it, because you get, whenever I've been reading about the gold rush, there's, how information is split into sections. There's like the postal service during the gold rush, the mining laws during the gold rush, the women during the gold rush. They're just this extra section head. They're not part of the whole thing. They're just an interesting side point, which I found really annoying. It's frustrating because you know better.
Yeah, and they're there. They were there. They made a lot of money, a lot of them. So
okay. So was this book harder or easier to write than the last one, and why?
This one was easier to write than previous books. I think probably since my debut, this was the easiest to write, because I knew the setting so well. I'd done so much research through my life of sort of being immersed in this setting. And I love it. And I watched Deadwood on repeat. And things like that, that you kind of immerse yourself in this world, so it feels quite second nature. So, and the characters came so easily, and their voices came so easily, because I write all in first person. So as long as I've got a strong voice, the characters just flow, and it's, it was a really fun one to write. It's mostly a blur because I did it at 5 o'clock in the morning most days, but it was quite straightforward.
I've got such an irrelevant question. Following up, because you mentioned Deadwood. It's just so superficial. Can you remember your amazement when you realised that Lovejoy was Ian McShane? Was in Deadwood? Hold on a second.
The most awful character in TV, pretty much, who I did use as a bit of a template for my awful character in The Rush. And he's just, it was a bit of a shock.
It was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
He was, I say Sunday, because I can't remember what day it was on, but it was, he's Sunday gentle evening, or maybe Monday TV. He wasn't 9 o'clock HBO murder and swearing and
constant swearing. I think every other word was a swear word. It was wonderful writing.
Oh, if you haven't watched Deadwood, watch Deadwood. That's our recommendation.
Absolutely, watch Deadwood.
Okay, so without giving away any spoilers, did the book end the way you originally planned, or did it surprise you too?
I don't plan books, so I don't know how I expected it to end. I knew I wanted it to end with the uncovering of the murderer and the comeuppance, but I didn't know who it was when I started writing the book. And I realised that each of the three women comes up with their own theory that is completely like evidence-based in their own narratives. And they each had a theory as to who did it. And they're all different men. So I kind of got to the point at about just over 2/3 or 3/4 in that I was like, I probably have to decide this now of who actually did it. So yes, it ended in the way I thought it might, but also no, because I didn't plan at all. Just kind of
Isn't that hard to do when you're writing historical fiction? Like not have a plan.
I've never had a plan. I've never had.
It's just how you write generally. You're just not.
Yeah,
you're just not
I just
planner.
make it up for a long time and then figure it out at the kind of 3/4 mark when I know I have to bring it all together somehow. And just there were points where I had to go back and tweak things because of who it ended up being, that I had to seed it, but it was quite minor.
Okay, so before asking the next question, Beth, can you please show us? I want you to do two things. Show us the rush, but also I want you, because we were talking about it before we started recording, what I now say is my favourite bit.
Oh yeah. This one. Look,
yes,
you can see
it's
my
glorious.
laptop, you can see myself in it. It's so shiny. But yeah, it's gorgeous. And there is a Goldsboro special edition with a beautiful sprayed edge as well. It's definitely worth getting.
And my favourite bit, which is the maps. How did you feel when you saw you got the maps in your book?
I really tentatively emailed my editor and was like, could I maybe have a map? I've never had a map.
You asked for one?
I did, because it's such a thing in the book. That's the map
of
the gold fields, and it's the real map from I think it's 1897. So thankfully I have copyright, but it's it's beautiful, and it's got Dawson City there, and then the main gold claim that I've got for one of my characters is there, and then it's this whole lovely area, and I've never had a map before, and I was so excited to get a map.
I just think maps
always wanted a map.
They just add something different, just that little bit extra to a book. And
somebody's taken the effort to kind of go, no, this you should be able to visualize a bit more. It's like fantasy novels or maps, and that really helps situate you in the environment. So
exactly, I think it's fantastic. Okay, so did you ever hit the wall when writing The Rush, and how did you get past it?
No, I didn't. It was really straightforward. Well, I say straightforward. It's still hard. It's hard to write a book. It's it's 100,000 words. There's a lot of research, but it was a really positive experience. The only thing I felt that was hard was because I completely changed my writing schedule for it. I used to write just at weekends and at lunch breaks and things like that. But my job changed a bit and my life changed a bit, and I ended up changing my entire sleep pattern to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to write for 2 hours before my daughter woke up at 7:30. So that was a adjustment. But it's something now I've been doing since end of 22. So it's worked out.
Do you think that's how it will be now for the remaining books?
I was up this morning writing on another book. So it's just like, it works. It can get about 1,000 words done every morning, and then it's when I'm in it, when you're in a book and you can just keep going. So I get about 1,000 words done, so it adds up an awful lot over a period of time.
Well, seeing that we've already mentioned that you are getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, the next question is, what are you working on next, if you want to tell us?
So technically I'm working on a book under a pseudonym at the moment, which is the second on contract, which I can't talk about, but it's very exciting. But I've just delivered another Beth Lewis book to Viper, and that is a pure my take on a Western, like a full-on gun-toting outlaws and cowboys Western, but all about the women at the time, because there were women there too.
Did you know this was going to be your thing? And I say historical fiction, Westerns, that whole era.
No, I've always had 2 book deals. So the publishers have always wanted something similar for a follow-up.
Yeah.
So it kind of depended on what the deal was, because my first book was a kind of coming of age dark story, and so was my second book. And then my third one was a more women's fiction focused story about a woman in a domestic violence situation, and that had speculative elements, and so the follow-up was similar and had speculative elements. And so now this one is, I feel like I'm settling now into a bit more of a niche, and I really want to write a book about female motorcycle gangs of the 1960s. That's my next one.
Beth, you're just like this. You're just like this cool person. I think you're just cool. You are.
I've never been cool before in my life.
Oh, you are. You can have it today. I just think like you're writing all these things. I'm just like, it's just cool. You're just writing the things that you want to write and interest you, and it's just, there is coolness in that.
Oh, bless you. I think it's just, I can't write something if I'm not interested in it. I don't know about you, but I just, if it's not something that grips me, I'm just not.
I feel the same way about book topics, the way I feel about jobs in general. If you're going to spend, I'm just saying, if you're going to spend a minimum of 8 hours a day doing something, at least it needs to be something I have an interest in and that I enjoy, because it's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so what message or feeling do you hope readers take away from The Rush?
I hope that they take away a bit more knowledge of a time in history that is very often overlooked, and possibly a bit more awareness of women's role in that history. And it's a book that's all about the kind of interconnectedness of women and the sort of sisterhood that we all have, no matter where we are. You usually are going to help out a woman, and if they need it. And I think that in a very lawless environment, a very difficult environment, is even more stark. And I hope that people would take away that kind of feeling of togetherness and connectedness that I think we all have.
Because the hostility, when I'm just thinking about it, it's not just like the terrain and I say doing the job, but it's the hostility from the people around you, the hostility from people, and I say men who just think you are less than and you're just there to be wives and bear children. Like that is your role.
Mm-hmm. Or prostitutes. That was
prostitutes.
The main reason women were there was either as wives or as prostitutes, because I mean, from an entrepreneurial point of view, there were a lot of men looking for that at that time, so they made a lot of money. But it's a very dangerous thing. So, yeah.
So finally, Beth Lewis, to end our coffee break, which book, film, show, or video game do you recommend?
Deadwood. We've been there. So I just finished a couple of books. I finished
Oh, it's so good. I keep losing my horse.
Yeah, right. The horses. So the funny story. The horse in the Rush, her name, she belongs to one of my ladies. Her name is Bluebell, and she is named after Ruth Ware's horse in Red Dead Redemption. So
oh my God.
He kindly gave me permission to use it. So I recommend Red Dead Redemption to anyone. It's a fantastic game. I'm
trying to think. I think you are my first coffee break video game recommendation, and
there you go.
I support this message. I might even leave my Xbox username in the show notes. So, Beth Lewis, that just leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us for the Conversation Coffee Break.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great fun.
And that's it for this coffee break. Thank you so much for joining me. Starting from season 4, we'll be bringing you regular coffee breaks. 30-minute episodes perfect for a quick chat with your favourite authors about their latest books. And here's the fun part. Next season, we are answering your questions. If there's something you've always wanted to ask an author, send it in. Email your question to theconversation@nadimmmatheson.com, and we might just answer it in a future episode with a special shout out to you, of course. Until next time, keep reading, keep listening, and I'll see you soon for another coffee break. Oh, and before I forget, don't forget to subscribe, follow, like, review, and share this episode with your friends. Your support keeps the podcast growing, and if you head down to the show notes, you can also support the podcast by buying us a cup of coffee. The links are in the show notes.